My name is Kim Walker. I'm the CEO of NAISDA Dance College. I'm also a graduating student from NAISDA Dance College back in the day. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging on the beautiful land that NAISDA is situated now, which is the land of the Darkinjung people, where we've been for now around almost 20 years now, and the community's welcomed NAISDA into the country here, and we've become a part of the country as we continue our songlines. I think NAISDA's learning model is totally unique in Australia, not only in Australia but internationally, because it comes from a dance performance perspective, but it also comes from a very strong cultural base as well. So you put all those elements together and it kind of just gives you a much broader range of learning and how you actually learn as well. You know, our connections with our cultural tutors and our cultural communities are very strong, and that forms the basis of what we develop in our curriculum, how we write it, how we teach it, and then ultimately how those young people who go through the course go on to perform and become the leaders of tomorrow. For a start, the Western education system was written in the Western context. It wasn't written in the First Nations context. First Nations learning is very, very different to a Western context. So when you take people out of that First Nations learning and put them into a Western context, it sometimes just does not fit. And that's just not from First Nations people. It's from a lot of different people who don't fit into that system. I didn't fit into that system when I was young, and it was through the arts and dance and creativity that I got to get to be where I am now. So, you know, and for people who don't fit into that system, the arts is always a place where they tend to gravitate towards, because they can be free-thinking, creative people, and they can go forward with that. And the arts and dance, music, education inspires you to be a self-thinker and to take things forward, not to kind of fit into a certain box. I think one of the most unique things about NAISDA's learning is the fact that we have a cultural residency program. And that cultural residency program engages with remote communities, and we bring down cultural tutors from remote communities to teach at NAISDA. And then we take the whole school, pack them up and take them up on country, and they do the cultural residency up there, and they learn the songs and dances from where we're coming from and the songline that they come from. They hunt and fish, they're part of that community. That really gives a different context to how they learn, and it really is a bonding exercise for them about how they connect with the land and with the past, and how they connect that to themselves going forward, and how they can take their lessons from that and investigate their own communities as well. So it's a really kind of going back to basics, but then expanding as well. That's a unique program that has been going on ever since NAISDA started. I think the first cultural residencies, I was lucky enough to go on one of the first cultural residencies, and that was to Mornington Island. So that happened like many, many years ago, like almost 50 years ago. So NAISDA's been doing those cultural residencies for 50 years, and that has informed where we go with all of our curriculum as well. So that's really strong. And that, you know, that 50 years is kind of a minute amount of time in the space of 65,000 years. And it's really about, we often talk about cultural dance, traditional dance, so forth and so on. We don't use the word traditional dance at NAISDA, we use the word cultural dance, because it's ever evolving. People think of traditional dance and they put it in a box over there. We don't do that. We think cultural dance is ever expanding and always going on and always changing, which is fantastic. So for 50 years, NAISDA's been doing that, and that's inspired and informed our performing, practicing artists when they leave, and our graduates when they leave. It informs their cultural practice as well, which is really important. Oh, look, we're really proud of the way that NAISDA's been successful with its education. And education is a very broad term, because it's not just education, it's life skills, it's all of those things. It's not just about, you know, we kind of think of education as, you know, in this kind of box, But education is everything. Education is life skills. Education is learning, talking, communicating, all of those things. And that's why I think NAISDA is really successful. If you look at the success of NAISDA graduates over the almost 50 years of its existence, which is only a minuscule, I was thinking about this earlier, only a tiny little bit of the 65,000 years of learning and teaching, as opposed to the Western canon and things like that. But we're very proud of the fact of the graduates who come through. They go on to so many different things in life. Some of them become fantastic dancers. Some of them become creators and choreographers. I was talking to somebody the other day, and there's a show with Sydney Theatre Company at the moment called The Visitors, and two of the NAISDA graduates are, one of them's assisting on sound, the other's assisting on set. So the skills that you get at NAISDA not just give you the skills to be a performer, but they give you the skills to be to go forward as an artist as a career option, because there's many facets to being an artist as a career. You never get to be, there's a very small percentage of people who get into a company and then they have, a company life, which is fantastic. I had that for 10 years, but it's a very short career. So you have to go on and do other things. Our students also get to be able to do that, but when they leave NAISDA, they've got the skills to start looking at where else they want to go. What other things inspire them, like weaving. There's some fantastic weavers that have come out of NAISDA. The ones that have graduated, they're creating their own companies, Karul Dance Company, Karul Projects, creating work as independent artists is fantastic. So the skills you get at NAISDA are very strong in that context. One of the major reasons why NAISDA is so successful and has been so successful is that we just don't look at the education in isolation. There's so much more to that. We have to look holistically at all of our developing artists and practicing artists' needs. And that goes from housing down to counselling, down to physiotherapy, all the elements that go in making up a life, because all of them live on site. The majority of them live here. So it's not just about come to college and then go home. They are coming to NAISDA and they're part of NAISDA. They're here for 40 weeks of the year. So all of those other elements that we have to put there to support them is very, very necessary. They get homesick. They've got family issues like everybody else does. So how do we deal with all of those, keep them focused and things like that? And it's those holistic elements that really make a difference. Because if you look at NAISDA's we're in the vet sector, vocational education sector, we have 3 times more completion rates than anyone in the vet sector. 2 times more than non-Indigenous, 3 times more than Indigenous in the vet sector. And people go, why is that so successful? It's because of all the other elements that we put into it. One of the best things through this model of education is the ability, not the ability, but you see young people who come in at 17 and leave at 21 or 22, and their growth over that time is one of the most amazing things, because you've got them at a very vulnerable time. You've got them between, they've just left school, they think the world is out there for them, so they're coming to NAISDA and they go, oh my God, I'm free, free from everyone, but you're not. But it's a pivotal learning time between 17 and 21. It really sets you up for that, and to be able to see young people grow up and see their maturity as they go through that is fantastic. We're very open to with our learning model. We're very open to different ways of looking at it. It's not like here's an essay, do it. If you've got an essay to do, you can film that essay. You can make a movie about it. You can make a dance film about it. There's lots of different ways to express yourselves. So we're open to how they want to express themselves with that. And then we can go through that. And that gives them a certain freedom. It gives them a certain kind of willingness to engage, because, oh my God, I don't want to write 150,000 words. No, I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to go out into the bush and I'm going to do a story about it. So it's opening them up to their eyes to their different ways of learning, which is the way that it should be. Oh, we could go back a millennium and talk about that. I mean, racism is alive and well for First Nations kids. It's a very difficult thing. Australia has that in its, in its realm at the moment that we have to try and change. That's one of the biggest barriers because, once we get past that, then we can all start to work together. I think one of the things one of the other elements that in our education model that is unique is the fact that we really kind of engage with industry. We don't, our young people who come in here, we don't just kind of go, here you are for 3.5, 4.5 years, however, off you go, good luck in the industry. We actually engage with the industry on a regular basis. We have relationships with most of the major contemporary dance companies around Australia, with lots of different organisations. So in their final years of study, we are actually pitting them with all these people. So when they go into the industry, it's not like a real shock. They've got relationships, they've got contacts, they've got, done some work with these people. So it's a real kind of streamline into an industry which is really, really strong. Without those partners, it would make it very difficult because then the student would leave and they'd be looking around for the first year about where am I going, who am I going. So it's a real kind of nice kind of connection into the industry, which is great. Oh, look, there's lots of fantastic stories through NAISDA, and everyone who comes through NAISDA has got their own success. Their own success in what they want to do. You can't go past if you want to highlight, the success of Bangarra, because Bangarra was started through NAISDA, and Stephen Page and now Francis Rings, who's the artistic director, both NAISDA graduates. We've got a new company called Karul Projects that's started by Thomas E.S. Kelly and his wife Tari Sansbury. Recent graduate, I say recent in the last 10 years, but they've started their own company and that's really gaining traction. So to be able to see people out there going and doing things is fantastic in that realm. But also students come here and then they go, you know what I want to do? I want to go back to my community and I want to work in my community. So there's lots of those successful NAISDA graduates working in community, giving the skills that they got at NAISDA onto communities around Australia. And I think that the unsung heroes of that is quite extraordinary as well. It's almost 50 years ago that Carol Johnson started NAISDA. She came to Australia and she went, what is here for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? She came from a fantastic black community performing company in New York with Elio Pomari. She saw that there was nothing here, so she set about changing that situation. And 50 years later, here we are at NAISDA with all of our courses and moving forward for that. So we owe a lot to the legacy of Carol Johnson and her vision for what this could be. We're looking at the whole of the performing arts ecosystem and how we can help. There's a critical shortage of skills in production, technical, costume design, set design, all those elements, especially from a First Nations perspective. There's a skill shortage overall, but there's particularly a skill shortage in the First Nations area. So NAISDA is looking at different models that we can bring in that can address that shortage and bring more First Nations people into costume design, set design, stage management, because it's a natural and beautiful thing to be able to do, and that's what we want to do. And that gives a different ecology to the college as well. You've got different people with different artistic aspirations. You've got dancers, you've got people who want to be set designs, costume designers, all those, bringing them into one place. They form relationships that will go on, which I know will go on, and they will do major productions in the future, and we'll be sitting back and going, they met at NAISDA. So that's very exciting. We also have plans to expand the colleges to a much bigger entity, and that's in the works as we speak.